Welcome to the Real Estate Virgins podcast. We have an absolutely crazy episode lined up for you today on the backs of some crazy industry-changing news, the settlement with NAR that is about to change the landscape of real estate forever. We are here to navigate this issue with you, or this new landscape that we're in. We're here to hear straight from the source and go over possible solutions that you can implement today in your business. My name is Jordan Brown at Jordan Sells ATX on Instagram, here with my co-host John Michael Perez.
What's up, guys? At John Michael Perez, Instagram, Facebook, all the socials. I'm super excited. This is an emergency episode because a lot of agents are sort of in the dark. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and what we're going to do is we're going to navigate exactly what the information that we have is, and then also, guys, really, we're a solutions-based type of podcast. So we're going to try to find solutions and at least give you some of our thoughts on how we can fix what is going on. So this is going to be a groundbreaking episode, and I think you're going to want to tune in. And if you hear anything that might help you or your team, please send it to them, because this is going to be a big one. For sure.
Yeah, unless you've been living under a rock for the last 24 hours, huge news from NAR regarding this settlement. We've talked about this issue in this podcast before. I'll say first that I'll be the first to admit that I did not see us getting to this point. Yeah. If you go back and listen, I remember calling this a nothing burger, and it has absolutely gone the opposite of that. So
yeah. But before we get started, real quick, guys, if you are an agent out there and you feel like you're on a lonely island and you have zero support, we've started a groundbreaking team, really. We've got over 40 agents already within our organization, and we've got tons of support, proprietary social media training, and it's just really cool to see other people win on our team. So if you want to know more about that, we're going to have a link in the description, and that's pretty much all I've got to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, this change is going to require that you lean on other people.
100%.
I think that's the biggest thing, is that navigating. I can't imagine going through this on my own and not having any guidance to hear what's helping other agents win, because this is going to make or break a lot of people. I think it really will. I think a lot of agents are going to be forced to look at themselves and go, what is my value proposition? And the more value that you have for your clientele in this changing time is going to really be glaring here in a few months.
Also, leadership, like who is your leadership, and are they leading from the front, or are they leading from the back, right? And what I'm seeing right now is some people are running with their tails tucked between their legs, and unfortunately, we've got to have the right leadership in front of us so that we can be led into victory.
Absolutely. I mean, I've already seen it on social media, where in our mastermind groups, not like the ones that we meet up in, but on the online ones where there's 250,000 agents from around the country involved. And you're seeing some pretty visceral responses. There's responses all over the spectrum. One of them I saw last night, this guy said, I'm about ready to hang it up. I'm ready, maybe I need to get out of the industry. Because I cannot take this unpredictability anymore. Yep. Agents are folding like $5 lawn chairs from Walmart right
Someone
now.
DM'd me yesterday on Instagram. They're like, I don't know if this is the job for me. And the thing is I don't think, if you're pondering that, you're probably not in the right environment, right? You don't have good leadership. You don't have somebody that's saying, no, we can figure this out. We've got solutions. And that's one of the reasons why we're putting this podcast together today, this emergency podcast. We just recorded one 2 days ago, right?
We texted each other last night. We were like, we got to hop on an episode and talk
because
about this.
We're going to find solutions. And that's one thing that we're always do, is be a solution-based podcast.
I always look at things as, I've got no choice but to succeed.
Yep.
And so I don't have time to sit and cry about external factors that I have no control over. All I can control is my efforts and what I'm doing to help propel me and my team forward.
100%. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the news. We recently received an email from ABOR as well as NAR, correct?
Yeah, so yesterday was busy as far as communications go. What we're going to do is I'm going to go through the rundown. This is the actual press release from NAR's newsroom, which is essentially what we received via email.
And this isn't clickbait, guys. This is the actual news, right? You're going to see a lot of stuff on the news that say 6% is gone forever and real estate agents aren't going to be making any more money, right? So this is the actual real facts, okay?
Yeah, and I think it's also important that if this is your first time listening and you're a realtor and you may not, I don't know, there's probably a small percentage of people who have no idea what we're talking about. So NAR and a bunch of MLSs and such are involved in a court decision that they were found guilty of gaming commissions. They were found guilty. I think the exact charge was a conspiracy to raise commissions. And that was out of Missouri is where it started. So NAR was found guilty of that in the initial verdict. And so then it became NAR's communications to us were then, hey, we're going to fight this. We're going to appeal this because we don't believe anything that we did was wrong. And so we're going to fight for your interest.
Yeah.
Well, yesterday we get this settlement email, and here's the details of that. So this is straight from nar.realtor. And the headline is National Association of Realtors reaches agreement to resolve nationwide claims brought by home sellers. So it says the National Association of Realtors, NAR, today announced an agreement that would end litigation of claims brought on behalf of home sellers related to broker commissions.
Okay, wait. So let's stop there. This means that we can now move forward, right? That is a positive thing, right? So they're ending litigations, right?
Yep.
So this is not going to be pushed back anymore. We've pretty much got an answer now.
Well, that's what you would, I think if you stop there, you're like, oh, yay, good, no more litigation, right? Because litigation is the thing that I think is the bad optics on this. Whether NAR believes that they were guilty or not, it's the optics of having all these ongoing copycat lawsuits that are popping up. So they're trying to end that.
Okay.
So it says the agreement would resolve claims against NAR, over 1 million NAR members, all state/territorial and local realtor associations, all association-owned MLSs, and all brokerages with an NAR member as principal that had a residential transaction volume in 2022 of $2 billion or below.
So that means some of these brokerages that have over $2 billion or more in sales, correct, are still liable.
Correct.
Okay.
So the settlement, or at least they're not being let go from litigation.
Okay.
So it would still be ongoing for them.
Okay.
So the settlement, which is subject to court approval, meaning it has not been approved just yet, but should it go through, this is what it's going to entail. Makes clear that NAR continues to deny any wrongdoing in connection with the Multiple Listing Services, MLS, Cooperative Compensation Model Rule that was introduced in the 1990s in response to calls from consumer protection advocates for buyer representation.
Now, what I see real quick is that this may happen again, right?
Right.
Because buyers were calling at that time frame in the 90s and saying, hey, look, I don't have representation, right? And that's really, in my opinion, who it's going to hurt the most is these first-time home buyers, these buyers that only have enough or maybe don't even have enough for a down payment, right? And so this part is...
It feels like we're going back in time.
It really does.
It really does.
It really does. But at the same time, I know that there are solutions. I think that, we'll get to this in a little bit, but I do think that lenders are going to find workarounds when it comes to getting agents paid so that buyers, I guess, I don't know if the right word is marginalized buyers. Buyers that aren't
like on the fringe,
that are just barely qualified, that they can have an opportunity to be represented, right? Because if you go unrepresented, that is like worse, like extremely bad.
Well, I look at it as like, even if you're under prosecution for something and you're going into court, you're assigned a public defender if you can't afford one.
Yep.
So you still have representation in that regard, which is interesting that lawyers are the ones making this happen. and yet lawyers get like assigned to represent people.
And what's funny is lawyers get 30 to 40% of whatever they win. Right?
I love whenever I'm driving down the highway and I see a billboard of lawyers basically gloating how much money that they got their client, but then in the smaller print shows how much they got, and it's more than their client.
Yeah. Well, not all the time.
Not all the time, but
yes.
On the billboards, they like to flash how much they.
So it's funny that these lawyers they chase after. They're pretty much ambulance chasing. I mean, maybe I shouldn't be saying this because but like they see these big opportunities and they're like, you know what? Let's take advantage of this. But nobody's coming after their money because that would be lawyers.
Yeah, it would be lawyers shooting themselves in the foot.
Exactly.
So it's easy to go after this because they saw a juicy lawsuit. But their own commission structure is very interesting.
Okay, so let's keep going.
So under the terms of the agreement, NAR would pay $418 million.
I wonder how they're going to pay for that.
I'm sure it's not going to be our dues. Over the approximately 4 years. Now, I did see, and I believe that's in here, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, that they said that they're not going to raise your 2024 dues.
Oh,
so at least for 1 year you're protected.
Yeah, well, hopefully they're still around by the end of 2024.
So here's a quote. It says, NAR has worked hard for years to resolve this litigation in a manner that benefits our members and American consumers. It has always been our goal to preserve consumer choice and protect our members to the greatest extent possible. The settlement achieves both of those goals, says Nikia Wright, interim CEO of NAR. Two critical achievements of this resolution are the release of most NAR members and many industry stakeholders from liability in these matters, and the fact that the cooperative compensation remains a choice for consumers when buying or selling a home. NAR also secured in the agreement a mechanism for nearly all brokerage entities that had a residential transaction volume of 2022 that exceeded $2 billion in MLSs not wholly by realtor associations to obtain releases efficiently if they choose to use it. NAR fought to include all members of the release and was able to ensure more than 1 million members are included. Despite NAR's efforts, agents affiliated with Home Services of America and its related companies, the last corporate defendant, still litigating the sitzer-burnett case, are not released under the settlement, nor are employees of the remaining corporate defendants named in the case covered by the settlement.
So if I'm not mistaken, Home Services of America is actually owned by or is a part of Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett. And I actually heard a rumor that Warren Buffett is going to be still fighting this.
Well, he's got the money to do so.
I know, right?
And it also says, in addition to the financial payment, this is I think this is the thing that people mostly have an issue with, is what we're about to talk about right here. In addition to the financial payment, NAR has agreed to put in place a new MLS rule prohibiting offers of broker compensation on the MLS.
Prohibiting offers of broker compensation on the MLS.
It wasn't that long ago that they added that to the public eye on the MLS, which is what I think is funny. Because the whole goal was to have transparency. Mm-hmm. They were putting on, for the longest time, it didn't show, I think, on Zillow, on Realtor.com, those websites, what the buyer's agent was going to be paid.
Does it show?
It does right now.
Really?
Yes. So if you look up any listing right now, it'll have in there buyer's compensation. And it's what was used to be private on the MLS.
Interesting.
Yes. So now that's going away.
Okay.
Now, what I think also may happen, and this is kind of where it gets fuzzy, is buyer's compensation still going to be advertised privately like it was before? But to me, there's less transparency now. Anyway, we'll get into that here in a little bit. Let's keep going on the release from NAR. So let me repeat that one more time. In addition to the financial payment, NAR has agreed to put in place a new MLS rule prohibiting offers of broker compensation on the MLS. This would mean that offers of broker compensation could not be communicated via the MLS, but they could continue to be an option consumers can pursue off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, how often are we second guessing compensation, you know? And so here's the thing. Now it's just going to those communications are going to have to be off of the MLS, right? So what does that look like? Usually that's probably going to be a phone call or a text message, right? And you know, there is going to be more open play when it comes to negotiating the commissions due to the fact that sellers may know, like, hey, it's no longer no longer a set. I mean, here's the thing. It's always been not a set fee, right?
Yeah. It's always been negotiable, and it's always been in writing what is going to happen with the commission.
Exactly.
And what sucks is this feels like a case of one bad apple, in this case, like a few bad apples ruining the bunch.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what this feels like, because the way that I've always ran my business is when I'm talking to somebody, first of all, I have a menu of services.
Mm-hmm.
I have a range that, as part of my negotiation, is I'm presenting options to you that I'm comfortable with taking your listing at.
Okay, so let's get into some solutions real quick, super duper quick. On the MLS, there is a place where you can put links to outside websites, right? And so maybe what is going to start happening is there's going to be an outside website with this is just assumption, outside website with more information about the property, as well as possibly compensation on that website, not the MLS.
Yeah, I could see it where like you're redirecting it somewhere so that you can talk about it off MLS. Like it's technically off MLS, even though the link is within the MLS. So like I don't know the technical rule on that.
Yes, or maybe submitting a form that requests the buyer's agent compensation, right? Something to that effect, or just calling the agent, right? And so these are there's so many solutions that can happen that we can figure this out.
Yeah, and I think the conversation with your buyer clients, we'll get into this later, but I think I have like the way that people should think about going about this, but we'll save that for after we go through everything.
Okay.
But I think everything comes down to communication is what I'm seeing. I think people are panicking because they're having trouble on the fly coming up with what their value proposition is, what they bring to the table.
And that's the most important part of this entire thing, right? From the agent's perspective is, what is our value proposition to represent buyers? And sometimes, like you said, it's hard for some of these newer agents to communicate what their value proposition is.
Well, I'll tell you this, a lot of people's value proposition is they've been spinning it this way, which is part of the problem. My representation for you is free. Yeah. They've been telling buyer clients, hey, you don't pay me. I get paid by the seller. And that has kind of helped facilitate us getting into this hole. Yeah. And if that's how you are telling your clients if that's your value prop and that's how you're telling your clients how you get paid, that's not correct.
Yeah.
And you're going to be forced now to change how you approach that. And we'll talk about that solution here in a little bit. Offers of compensation help make professional representation more accessible, decrease costs for home buyers to secure these services, increase fair housing opportunities, and increase the potential buyer pools for sellers.
False.
That's where I start going, I don't know about that. Offers of compensation help make professional representation more accessible, decrease costs for home buyers to secure these services.
No, there's going to be buyers out there that are going to hurt from this.
Oh, 100%.
And that's really one part that really confuses me. Like, did they have actual real estate agents in that court representing us? You know what I mean? Like people that actually go through the day to day, and maybe they did it due to the fact that we aren't attorneys and we can't
practice law.
We can't practice law,
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall in the hearings. And whenever they said that they were going to appeal this, I was like, oh, now they're going to take it serious. Now they're going to put their best foot forward and have like maybe some real life examples of buyer representation and how that works. And maybe it's a misunderstanding on how this whole commission structure works, what the benefits are to the seller to incentivize buyer's agents and vice versa. Yeah. But it doesn't seem like that happened. If anything, this feels like a shortcut. It feels like an out to just stop the bleeding and to stop like the tarnishing of their reputation. That's how at the expense of the realtors, and buyers.
No, at the expense of the buyers.
No, 100%. But I think it goes hand in hand because now the realtor is going to have to go and talk to their buyer pool about this really what used to be kind of a more simple approach. And now it's a lot more complicated. Well, I don't know if this, I have to call and see if this house is going to be free for my representation for you or not, or if it's going to be paid out through you or this, or if we're going to have to ask for a seller concession.
Yeah. Another idea I had, which I will not do, but is have some type of secret code within the property description.
I saw your comment. It was so funny.
Buyer's agents welcome, right? That might be that isn't even secret coding. It's just like, hey, buyer's agents, you are welcome to come take a look at the house,
And the E is a 3.
Yeah.
In
like
the welcome.
It's
a typo. So it says they are also consistent with the real estate laws in many states that expressly authorize them. Further, NAR has agreed to enact a new rule that would require MLS participants working with buyers to enter into written agreements with their buyers. Have we not been doing that?
Yeah, that's not a new rule. If you don't know this, guys, you should be doing that already. And some smaller brokerages, they don't require it. I will say that. We've been at a brokerage that doesn't require it. And, that is actually at a detriment to you and the brokerage. So, and having that, and guys, here's the thing. Back when I first got into real estate, I thought that was a very big hurdle to get over. And it's really not. Like, all you have to do is just tell them, hey, I need permission for you. And I also need to let my broker know that I'm allowed to represent you. So just fill this out. We can go over it step by step if you'd like. And my thing is I let them, I keep them at ease and let them know it's not really as big of a deal as they may think.
I think the difference here is that, like, for example, if it was someone I knew, I would wait until we were going under contract to send them representation documents.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, it doesn't say that we can't do that.
You're right, but I think what this is going to do in turn is, let's say these new rules take effect, right? This gets agreed upon, it goes into effect, which I think they said, I'll look further down here, but I think July is the estimated timeline for when this goes in. What that's going to do is, if we have to have this representation agreement and now the way that you're paid out has changed, you are now going to have that conversation up front. Like, it should be, you're having the conversation about how you're getting paid and what your representation entails up front in writing, as opposed to, hey, now I'm going to send you the representation docs that reflect how I'm getting paid out.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. Instead of it being at the time of contract, you are now going to be having these conversations up front with a signed agreement before. I mean, this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to talk to my clients about this up front, have them sign it so that there's no gray area on.
So I think what we're going to do is we'll probably do another buyer consultation episode here in a little bit, so that you guys can be more prepared for situations like this and how you have those conversations.
You have to be script practicing right now.
Yeah.
You have to.
And then also you have to have a buyer's, in my opinion, you do have to have a buyer's consultation packet, and we've got those. But the thing is that if you don't have a packet and a value representation or a value proposition on that packet, then unfortunately it's going to be harder to show how much value you have,
Yeah, exactly. So to wrap up this paragraph, it says NAR continues, as it has done for years, to encourage its members to use buyer brokerage agreements that help consumers understand exactly what services and value will be provided and for how much. These changes will go into effect in mid-July 2024.
Okay, so it's coming up. Make sure to get all your buyers under contract soon.
Yeah, and so again, to highlight the verbiage here, it says that help consumers understand exactly what services and value will be provided and for how much.
Okay.
The difference was in this, now it's going to be, hey, you're paying for these services, but you're paying me for this. And in the case that a listing that you are looking at does not pay any commissions to me, you're going to be responsible for covering this fee. That's how it always should have been.
Yeah.
And and I think that's the difference is like whenever I talk to my buyer clients, and it's going to change, I think, their perception, because 9 times out of 10, my full fee has been covered by the list, by the broker of the listing agent. So now if it's not, let's say there's 0% paid out, I have to now tell that client, you're on the line to pay me now. And again, we'll get into what that conversation.
Well, here's the thing, though. Are we going to get? Okay.
I want to get. Yeah, let's get through the press release, and then let's talk about like just raw reaction, solutions, things like that. Here's a quote. It says, "Ultimately, continuing to litigate would have hurt members and their small businesses," said Miss Wright. "While there could be no perfect outcome, this agreement is the best outcome we could achieve in the circumstances." I disagree, but okay. "It provides a path forward for our industry, which makes up nearly 1/5 of the American economy and NAR. For over a century, NAR has protected and advanced the right to real property ownership in this country, and we remain focused on delivering on that core mission." Cool, bunch of fluff. "NAR exists to serve our members and American consumers, and while the settlement comes at a significant cost, we believe the benefits it will provide to our industry are worth that cost. This will be a time of adjustment, but the fundamentals will remain. Buyers and sellers will continue to have many choices when deciding to buy or sell a home, and NAR members will continue to use their skill, care, and diligence to protect the interests of their clients." Cool. So they made it worse for a lot of us and then said, "Hey, you'll figure it out."
So I got...
What's like your raw reaction to this? I mean, like when you first heard this, like tell me what went through your mind.
I think if I hired a realtor and they failed to represent me, I don't think I should work with that realtor anymore. We pay NAR thousands of dollars every year, and they failed to represent us.
And it's mandatory.
At
least for us, it is.
Yeah. I do feel like this is going to open up opportunities for the market to open up marketplaces for listings, right? And so what does that look like? I think that brokerages are actually going to open up their own MLS type platforms for their agents within, right? Due to the fact that this is going to open up an opportunity for agents not to be a part of NAR. I'm just going to... Now, here's the thing. NAR does do a lot for us in the background. They absolutely do. And they are an important part of our business. I do think that there is going to be more platforms opening up that we're no longer going to need them. I'm just being honest.
I feel like they had a chance to really go to bat for realtors, and they struck out. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel. Yeah. I feel like when I hear this verdict, I don't feel better about my buyer clients. I don't feel better for my agency for them. Mm-hmm. And you're right. I think it's going to shift a ton. I mean, Let me give you one example. There are a ton of builders right now that are aimed at first-time home buyers, right? And these builders are putting up houses like in minutes, right? And the first-time home buyer that barely has enough money to pay for closing costs and barely has enough money to put the down payment, so they're using USDA loans. Now they're going into a house that is being built within minutes, basically. It's like, boom, it's done. The house is ready, right? And they're still paying $250,000 in our market, right? And it's like, okay, if they... That's like the floor price.
That's the floor price, right? And so now, if they're getting into this transaction without representation, and there's a frame up there, and they don't even know the frame is messed up in the roof, like, guess what? That's a $10,000, $15,000 fix. And that's a lot less than a buyer representing them. You know what I mean? And so
to help facilitate what to do throughout the process.
Exactly.
Because here's the issue. What this is going to do is it's going to force people who cannot afford buyer representation to go straight to the listing agent who is signed to represent
the seller.
So it's almost like you're going into a fight with one arm tied behind your back.
Yes.
And so now, in the name of a savings to you as a buyer, you are now going in without guidance. Because again, you're right. I think the biggest people this is going to affect are first-time home buyers or inexperienced home buyers. People who haven't bought a home in so long. And imagine if you're having to sell your house and then buy somewhere else. Now you're getting the benefit from the sell side of this new rule, but then you're going to navigate this. What are you going to hire a buyer agent to help you buy your next property? Or are you going to stick to this new rule that everyone thinks is cool, that buyer representation isn't as important?
I think that overall things are going to shift downward a little bit. However, I know that brokers are going to figure it out. Leadership is going to figure out. Real estate has a lot of smart people. And in my opinion, just like Ricky Carruth said, he thinks that it's just shuffling paperwork. And now it's going to be the buyer's agent commission is probably going to be in the buyer's loan, or the buyer's agent's commission is going to be within the seller concessions.
Yes.
Right.
So that's a possible solution, right? So if I'm calling a listing for one of my buyers and they say, no, we're not paying out any buyer commission. Well, now, or buyer's agent commission. Mm-hmm. Now I tell my client, hey, Mr. Client, this particular property does not cover any of the 3% fee that you have agreed to pay me for your representation. So here's some possible solutions. And this is why it sucks, because that 3% concession would have helped them with other aspects other than representation. I think that's what sucks, is now I almost feel like maybe the loans, like the limits on how much you can ask for a concession, need to be addressed.
Yes, correct. And I think that is going to be addressed, especially with VA loans, because VA loans, they're a lot more stricter. And also there's limits to how much you can get in seller's concessions.
Correct. Because like, for example, right now, I'm just going to pull it up while we're looking at it. We have this little cheat sheet that tells us what the max concessions are. So for example, if you are on a conventional loan for a primary and secondary home and you're putting less than 10% down, you can only ask for 3%.
Correct.
That's the ceiling of what you can ask for. So who hurts from this? It's that buyer who needs, maybe they would have used that 3% to do a 2-1 buy down.
Yeah.
To get it to where they could afford it and feel better about their payment. Maybe they were going to use it to help them with their closing costs, their out-of-pocket expenses. But now it's to cover this fee.
Now, and also here's another thing that is completely wrong, is that the price of homes is going to go down. That is completely wrong.
The mainstream media has ran with this and have not done a good idea of portraying what exactly is happening. We just saw, you sent a screenshot to me, and I saw it myself on other platforms too. CNN, Fox, everyone is saying this is a literal screen, or like screen cap of something that we saw, where
this is clickbait. It's clickbait. It says
this is literally on CNN. New settlement signals end of 6% real estate commissions. Is that what this was? No. And so the mainstream media is doing exactly what they do with this. They put clickbait and bullshit out there that people eat up, and it misguides on what's actually happening. You can still offer 6% commissions. Isn't that crazy? What they didn't say, like, you can still make things as it was.
Yeah.
If you're a seller, like if you're talking to a seller after this settlement, should it go through? And they're like, well, why would I ever pay 6% for this again? Well, let's take a look at it. If you're in a market that's competing with a ton of other listings, I could see maybe during a buyer's or a seller's market that commissions may dip a little bit. But let's say you're in a market like ours right now, where there's over 10,000 homes of inventory, demand's a little bit down because the interest rates are higher. You need to incentivize people to come look at your house and to get it sold. So what's not going to happen? There's so many thoughts going through my brain. You had mentioned it's going to lower home prices. Do sellers want their home prices to go down? No, that's not what they want. That goes against what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So even just on that level, it doesn't make sense.
So here, just for example, I'm showing this house in Liberty Hill, and they're asking 1.5 million. Now they are offering 2% towards the buyer's agent. The house is not worth 1.5 million. It's worth 1.1, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think they care? No, they're going to put their house on the market for 1.5 million and wait until someone offers 1.3, and it's still not worth 1.3, right? Sellers are not going to change the list price and say, "Oh, well, I guess, since I don't have a buyer's agent, I'm just going to lower the price." No, they want the max amount of value. And the thing is that buyers it's always going to be negotiable. Both sides always going to be negotiable. So this will not impact home prices at all, I don't think.
If anything, the lowering of the home prices is going to be from the house sitting for much longer.
For sure.
That's where I see it going. Is if it's going to lower the home prices, it's because your house isn't selling, because you're not offering anything to incentivize people to come look at it.
Now, here's another aspect. Let's think about this. I wonder if Zillow is going to get hit really hard because they get paid mostly from buyer leads, right? And so if the buyer,
Zillow stock went down and Homes.com went up.
Interesting.
I listened to an interview on a podcast called Context that had one of the higher ups of Homes.com on there. Really great podcast, by the way. And he's talking about the differentiation between a site like Homes.com versus Zillow.
Okay.
And he said the way that we differ is that we are more like you own the lead. So if it's your listing, they should be going to you. Instead, the experience through Zillow is you get connected with this unrelated third party who, out of the blue, because they're paying you Zillow a fee, now that's your lead. Instead of going straight to the person who knows most about the house, which is the listing agent, they're getting you assigned to who's paying for that call.
Got it.
So Homes.com is, hey, you got an inquiry on your listing.
Got it.
So it makes sense that since they're listing agent focused, off of this news, their stock went up, I think, like 9% yesterday.
Wow.
Yep.
Interesting. Well, we've got associations with people that are paying $15,000 a month on Zillow leads, right? And it is working for them. However, what happens when buyer's compensation is shifted, right? And so I feel like that might be why Zillow stock has gone down so much, but we'll see. I think there is going to be a ton of solutions and ways around it. There always has been, there always will be. And one of the biggest things that will hurt our vocation is public opinion. Because if public opinion is that they no longer have to pay buyer's agents, unfortunately, that will hurt us the most.
Well, realtor perception is already trash. Like I've talked about so many times that I'll post something educational.
I think it's better than it used to be. I think it is. However, it is on the low, it's above car salesman.
Yeah, a very low bar, right?
Yeah.
But I just know that I post stuff on TikTok, now about to get banned. I post stuff on TikTok, I post stuff on YouTube, and a lot of the comments I get, even just on educational videos, are negative about being a realtor.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And I'm like, I'm just providing education so that I'm not even trying to tell you it's a good time to buy or not. I'm not trying to sway your opinion one way or another. I'm trying to educate the masses about home,
Well, here's the thing. As agents, one of our most important jobs is to educate the client. And it's one of the best gifts that you can give your community. It's one of the best gifts that you can give, your city or your anybody or your sphere of influence is education. And so that's one thing that we still need to continue to do is educate the market, right? Because and let them know really what's going on, because we are boots on the ground, right? And even sharing stories of, hey guys, I had this buyer. He was unrepresented. There was a plumbing issue and he didn't know about it, right? And guess what? he still purchased the house, and unfortunately, a year later, he lost 15 grand from having to fix the upstairs drywall. And so like those are things that buyers don't even know about, and they don't. Maybe buyers aren't educated in knowing that they need an inspection, or they need to look at the seller's disclosure, or is my house in a municipal utility district? There's so many things that buyers don't know that if they go in unrepresented, it is a scary thought that years later, they're going to have some type of detriment, like foundation issues, framing issues, plumbing issues. And then guess what? All they needed was a buyer's agent to represent them so that they didn't have to have that problem.
Well, it's the natural state of things, is that if you have two parties trying to come to an agreement on a huge purchase, that each one of them should have their own representation with impartial information. Mm-hmm. The issue is going to be, let's say these buyers can't afford to pay their buyer rep and they go straight to a seller. Well, now the listing agent is having to play both roles. How do you service your client at the highest level as the seller and educate the buyer? You don't. You're giving up somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked against listing agents that aren't disclosing certain information that they should be disclosing. And guess what? I'm the real estate agent. I'm the experienced one, right? And so what if they're doing that to unexperienced buyers, right? And just taking massive advantage of these buyers. Like it's a scary thought. I know that there's going to be a solution. I know that we're going to figure it out. It's going to take time. It's not going to be overnight. However, I think that the agent that is educated as well as is in an environment of leadership that is leading from the front is going to win the most.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time. Yeah. I mean, if you think that you can, if you're the listing agent and you're now having to represent both sides, or like you're now like, are you going to be around to show the house every time? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're gonna increase your workload for no extra pay. Mm-hmm. That's nuts.
Yeah.
It to me, it doesn't make sense, and it's very short-sighted to where, and again, I know that there's going to be a percentage of people who continue to do it the traditional way that we were used to before this settlement. I know that people will accurately explain the value of providing buyer agent commission so that there's an educated, motivated, and serious buyer that comes to buy your property in a timely manner.
Well, here's another thing. Here's another perspective. As agents, guys, when we do our marketing and when we do our advertising, it might be smarter to advertise towards neighborhoods that are closer to you and farming towards your immediate neighborhood, right? And so that's one thing that we might start seeing more of is agents that are farming the neighborhood that they live in so that when buyers come, just in case, we don't know if it's going to get to that, but so that when buyers do come to their neighborhood and want to buy a house in their neighborhood, you are already the neighborhood expert, right? Mm-hmm. And so now you can show that house a lot easier, right?
Yeah. And then for just like travel time too, if you're having to go open the door and things like that.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to get to that point, but I will say, as someone that is always trying to predict what's going to happen, it's better to be prepared than not be prepared and not be in the industry anymore.
What you can't do is get flat-footed here. Yeah. You don't want to get caught with your pants down, not having a plan, not adjusting, not prepared to have these conversations. So, because I mean, I saw tons of people online saying, "Hey, I had an immediate influx of buyer calls, seller calls, asking what does this mean?"
Yeah.
So because unfortunately the mainstream news is the leading source of things, they're probably the first to impact people's perceptions of what's happening.
Yeah.
So then you have to either correct or re-explain in layman's terms, or re-explain what's actually happening to your clients. Yeah. I mean, that's our job. Like you said, it's education. Don't be afraid, but you have to understand also what's happening. You have to understand the impacts on the day-to-day.
So pretty much to summarize, guys, buyer's agent compensation is no longer allowed to be on the MLS, right?
But it's still negotiable.
But it's still negotiable outside of the MLS, okay? Also, if I'm not mistaken, agents aren't going to have to be a part of NAR in order to show those houses, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know.
That is something that should be coming up here soon, if I'm not mistaken. Now, don't quote me on that. But
We'll continue to on the podcast. We'll continue to give you updates as this develops,
Yes.
because right now the settlement, from what I read, has not been agreed upon.
But there is a high likelihood of it being agreed upon.
Yeah.
So that's why the news went out. But I think that there's always going to be solutions, like we talked about. Seller concessions, putting it into the loan, putting it into the price. And negotiating outside of the MLS, that's not even. And the thing is most consumers, they're not even looking at that part of the Zillow, or they're not even looking part of Realtor.com, where they're just okay.
Well, it doesn't mean anything to them.
Yeah, it doesn't,
or at least it hasn't for the last however long that's been going on.
Well, to be honest, if the news didn't come out, it probably still wouldn't have meant anything to them anyways. Right?
Well, I think my biggest issue with this is that not having it on the MLS, I think, decreases transparency, which I think is counterintuitive to what they're trying to do. I don't agree with that. Like, even if you can make the buyer agent commission negotiable, which it always has been, you need to display that. It needs like, why are we taking that away? That's weird to me.
Yeah.
That's a weird decision. Like, why? Like I said, it just feels like we're taking a step backwards, because we made this effort to put it out to where everyone could see this particular house is paying 2%. This particular house is paying 3% buyer agent commission. Now, like, taking that away, but still making it to where it can be negotiated, or it's still available for that listing agent or that listing broker to offer.
And
what's the point?
Let me preface with this. I will say, not preface, I don't know if that's the right word. I will say, guys, everything is always negotiable. It's not supposed to be 6%. It's not supposed to be 2%. It's not supposed to. It's that discussion. You guys are supposed to have that discussion. We're not discussing what it's supposed to be right now. We aren't. We're just discussing the NAR settlement. Okay, just to cover our butts, right? We are just discussing how it's going to represent the buyer and how is it going to represent the seller.
Yeah, well, you could put any number in there. It could be 7%, it could be 10, it could be 2, it could be 1, it could be half. Like, whatever it is, putting it on the MLS and making it visible for consumers, I have no idea why they're taking that away.
Yeah.
That feels counterintuitive to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because less transparency is never better.
I agree.
And this feels like it muddies the water, is what it does for me.
Yeah.
And what it does, I think, in the eyes of buyers.
Yeah.
And so if your goal in your settlement release statement that you have on your website that says we always want to do what's right by our realtors, our consumers, and this and that, I don't think this is it. I think you're favoring only one party of that, and it's not your buyer agents and it's not the buyers.
Yeah. Well, it's our job to stand in the gap. It's our job to educate the buyers. It's our job to educate our value, right? And our value proposition and the things that we do to protect them, right? So no matter what happens with this settlement, we still have a job to do. Now, here's the thing. We can't do it for free, And so we're going to have to.
You could. I think there's going to be a race to the bottom. I could see that. I think there's going to be a race of people that go, I mean, just think about with listings. They do it right now. I'll discount my commission down to the ground to get this listing. People do that already. I drive by on the highway and I see discounted, 33% off commissions. First of all, that's wrong. And I'm amazed that billboard exists, because that's saying that there is a set commission. Mm-hmm. So how can you even advertise that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I digress. This is going to cause people to go, I'll be your buyer.
They're already doing that.
I'll represent your buyer, your buyer transaction for $1,000.
Oh, they're already doing that.
Yeah.
But
I think it's going to force more people into it.
But what do you get from discount agents?
Discount service.
And so if you're getting discounts, like, do you take your wife out to McDonald's for a nice date for your anniversary date? Right? No. And so, yeah.
There's an analogy that I use that I'm going to use here, because people perception's everything. You can get 2 tacos from Jack in the Box for 99 cents. At least you used to. I'm sure with inflation it's $1.29. You can also get 2 tacos from Torchy's for $8.
Yeah, something like that.
$8 or $9. Those are 2 different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But people pay for both of them.
Yeah.
So are you a 2 for 99 cent realtor or are you a 2 for $8 realtor? Yeah. And the more value proposition that you build up, you can explain why you're why you're a Torchy's realtor.
Okay.
No, but I know that's a silly example, but you understand, you follow that. People pay, like, there's a reason that people buy Toyota Corollas and there's a reason people buy Lamborghinis.
Yep. Yeah, that's I agree. Okay, so where do we go from here?
We'll keep you updated. I'll tell you this is an absolute shockwave to the industry. It's lighting up social media. I mean, I've scrolled through on Facebook and seen more talk about this than anything else that I can recall. And I think it's also just because we're involved with it. And so like we're in all these groups and everything and everyone has an opinion. Yeah. So
I think where we go from here is not to stress the things that we cannot control, right?
Yeah.
And so if we can't control this, then we should not be putting our energy into it. Now, if you're on Instagram, which you should be following both Jordan and I, at John Michael Perez,
at Jordan Sells ATX,
then you're going to get up-to-date information. We're probably going to be sharing more info on this. And then also we're always sharing value content, right? Valuable content.
To both buyers, sellers, and realtors.
Yeah, for sure. And so here's the thing. Don't stress what you can't control. And then 2,
this is a good time to reflect on you in your business
and your value
prop.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't explain that. Like, we can't put that to you any more. Like, we can't stress it any more than we are right now.
Yeah, 100%.
Value prop. Too many people have been skating by the excuse of using this verbiage. I'm not saying I use it, but I get paid by the listing agent, so you don't have to worry. My representation for you is free. That is out the window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So guys, hope you enjoyed this episode. I think that we're going to be fine. It's going to be okay.
Everyone just take a collective breath right now.
He's talking to himself right now.
Yeah. I got the selfie on the phone going right now. Jordan, you need to breathe.
I know. But we're going to be okay. There's always going to be solutions. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram.
People who find solutions are going to do just fine.
Yes, correct. And, I've been through way worse than this. I've gone through some really dark times. And this is actually not even a dark time. This is just and here's one thing I will say. I told my wife this yesterday. I said, it's hard not to worry when everybody's worrying.
Yeah, that's the thing I think everyone's external panic is making me go like, should I panic?
Yeah, exactly. And so, but here's the thing. I mean, do you remember when COVID happened and everybody got locked in and everybody was panicking? It was like, 4 years later, we're okay. Right?
Yeah, we made it all right.
We made it all right.
Things might be a little bit different.
Yeah.
And they were different for a little while.
Yeah.
And we figured stuff out.
Exactly.
We're on the other side. We're moving forward with our lives. And so will the real estate industry.
Yeah. Things were different. Things became different. Guess what? We're okay. And that was death. That was people facing death, right? If you're facing a commission change or a commission paper shuffling, you're going to be okay.
You're right.
All right, guys.
Thank you so much. That's a good spot to end it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, if you've heard anything of value and you want to share this with your friends, please do so. This is a completely free episode. So we're super grateful that you're listening.
And a free, easy way to help support the podcast. We will never ask you for a dime, at least unless you're a sponsor. Go ahead and give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever we're at, YouTube. Give us a little 5-star review. We thank you so much for that. Thank you guys so much for listening. Changing landscape. We're here to help you through it, and we'll keep you up to date. Check you guys out in the next one.